Love can blind us to the truth, even when it's screaming in our face. Tonight, we unravel Mark's story, a man who thought he had it all, only to discover his fiance's heart belonged to someone else. Betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers. My name is Mark, 29, a graphic designer living in Denver. A year ago, my life felt like it was finally clicking into place. I had a job I loved, crafting logos and branding for local businesses, a cozy apartment with a view of the Rockies. And Linda, my fiancée of 3 years, she was my first love, the kind of woman who could make you feel like the world made sense just by being near you. We met in college, me a quiet art major sketching in the library, her a bold marketing student who could light up any room with her ideas. I still remember the day she plopped down next to me, commenting on my doodles. Her confidence pulled me in, and I was hooked. Linda and I built something I thought was unshakable. We'd spend weekends hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park, dreaming about our future, a small house in Arvada, maybe a kid or two, a dog to chase frisbees in the yard. She'd talk about her job as a marketing manager, her voice buzzing with excitement as she described her latest ad campaign. I loved how she'd get lost in her work, sketching ideas on coasters at our favorite coffee shop. But there was always this one corner of her life that felt off. Her best friend, Thomas. Thomas was a photographer, this laid-back guy who'd been in her life since high school. He was always around, group camping trips, late-night taco runs, even dropping by our place with coffee after a long shoot. Linda's eyes would sparkle when he talked about his latest gallery show or some impulsive trip to the desert. I didn't think much of it at first. She'd known him forever, and I wasn't the jealous type. I trusted her completely. But there were moments that stuck with me, her stepping outside to take his calls, or the way she'd laugh a little too hard at his stories, her hand lingering on his arm. I'd push it down, telling myself I was overanalyzing. Linda loved me. She wore the ring I gave her, spent hours browsing wedding venues online, even picked out her dress, but my gut wouldn't let it go. She'd get defensive if I asked about Thomas, saying, "He's like my brother, Mark, chill." I wanted to believe her, so I did. I ignored how she'd check her phone during our quiet evenings, or how she'd insist on solo hikes every few weeks to clear her mind. I told myself it was normal, that she just needed space to think. As a graphic designer, I'm trained to notice details, the way colors clash, the balance of a composition. But with Linda, I ignored the signs. I didn't want to be the guy who doubted his fiancée. I kept picturing our life together. The way she'd smile when we talked about our wedding, the way she'd curl up next to me on the couch. But those solo hikes, those late-night texts, she always had an excuse, and I always bought it. I'd lie awake sometimes, wondering if I was enough, but I'd shove the thought away. Then, one Tuesday night last year, everything fell apart. Linda was out, supposedly at a client dinner, and I was home, tweaking a logo for a new brewery. Her laptop was open on the kitchen counter, screen glowing with an email she hadn't closed. I wasn't snooping, honest to God. I was just grabbing a soda, but the words caught my eye. An email to Thomas, no subject, starting with, "I love you, but I can't leave him." My heart stopped. I sat down, hands trembling, and read the rest. She wrote about being torn, how Thomas was her soulmate. That moment when I said, "We need to talk," felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Linda's smile froze, her eyes darting to the open laptop on the kitchen counter. The air in our Denver apartment thickened, like the world was holding its breath. I can see it in her face. She knew exactly what I'd found. No more excuses, no more lies, just the truth, raw and ugly, waiting to spill out. "Mark, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice shaky, but I could tell she was stalling. I pointed to the laptop, my throat tight. I read the email. "Linda, the one to Thomas, don't lie to me." Her face crumpled, and for a second, I thought she'd cry, but she just stood there, clutching her purse like a shield. "It's not what you think," she started, but I cut her off. "You love him. You called him your soulmate. You've been meeting him for 2 years. What part of that isn't what I think?" The words came out harsher than I meant, but I couldn't stop them. I'd spent years trusting her, ignoring every red flag, and now it was all crashing down. Linda sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. "It was never physical, Mark. I swear. It was just talking. He gets me in a way I didn't think I needed." "Gets you?" I repeated, my voice cracking. What does that even mean? I'm your fiancée, Linda. I've been here, planning our life, while you're out spilling your heart to him. You called me your safe bet. Do you know how that feels? I paced the living room, my hands shaking. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but instead, I just stood there, feeling like my chest was caving in. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I do love you, Mark. I didn't lie about that. You're, you're everything I should want, stable, kind, safe. But Thomas, he's this chaos I can't let go of. I tried to stop. I really did. Her words were like knives, each one twisting deeper. Should want. I said, barely above a whisper. So I'm just the guy you settled for? Linda shook her head, reaching for my hand. But I pulled away. It's not like that, she said. I was confused. I still am. I didn't want to hurt you. But she had. She'd been hurting me for 2 years, sneaking off to meet Thomas on those solo hikes, writing emails about her soulmate while I was designing our wedding invitations. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed up late, tweaking logos for clients, while she was texting him, laughing at his messages, living a life I wasn't part of. I sat down across from her, my head spinning. When did it start? I asked, not sure I wanted the answer. She hesitated, then said, 2 years ago, after that camping trip in Estes Park. We just talked. It felt harmless at first. Harmless. The word made my stomach churn. I remembered that trip, Thomas telling stories around the campfire, Linda hanging on his every word. I'd felt like an outsider then, but I told myself it was nothing. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. If you were so confused, why not talk to me? She wiped her eyes, her voice small. I didn't want to lose you. You're my rock, Mark. I thought I could figure it out on my own. Her rock, her safe bet, her backup plan. I felt sick, like everything I'd built my life around was a lie. We sat in silence for what felt like forever. I kept picturing her with Thomas, laughing, sharing secrets, building a world I wasn't invited to. I thought about our plans, the house, the kids, the life we dreamed of. Was any of it real to her? What now? I finally asked. Linda looked at me, her eyes pleading. I don't know. I want to fix this. I'll cut him off. I promise. Can we try? I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But the email kept replaying in my head. Soulmate. Safe bet. I love you. I looked at the woman I thought I'd spend my life with and realized I didn't know her anymore. I need time, I said, standing up. I can't do this right now. I grabbed my keys and walked out, the door clicking shut behind me, leaving her crying on the couch. As I drove through the dark Denver streets, my mind was a mess. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there, not with her, not with the ghost of Thomas between us. I pulled into a park, cut the engine, and sat there, staring at the stars. For the first time in years, I felt completely alone. Sitting in my car that night, the Denver skyline glowing faintly in the distance, I felt like I was drowning. The stars above the park were sharp and cold, mocking me with their clarity while my life was a tangled mess. Linda's words kept echoing, soulmate. Safe bet. I love you. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to make sense of it all, but every thought led back to the same gut punch. The woman I loved had been living a double life for 2 years. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't face Linda, not with her tear-streaked face and empty promises still hanging in the air. Instead, I crashed on my buddy Ryan's couch. Ryan's an old college friend, a bartender who's seen me through every high and low since freshman year. I showed up at his place around midnight, barely able to string a sentence together. Linda's been with Thomas, I managed to say, the words tasting bitter. Ryan didn't ask for details. He just handed me a beer and let me talk. I poured it all out, the email, the confrontation, the way Linda called me her rock, like it was some consolation prize. Ryan listened, nodding, until I ran out of steam. Man, that's rough, he said, leaning back in his chair. You don't deserve that. Nobody does. He hesitated, then added, What are you going to do? I stared at the beer can, tracing the condensation with my thumb. I don't know, I admitted. I still love her. But how do you come back from this? The next morning, I called in sick to work. As a graphic designer, I can usually lose myself in a project, tweaking fonts, balancing colors, but my head was too foggy. I kept picturing Linda and Thomas on those solo hikes, laughing, sharing secrets, building something I was never part of. I wondered what she told him about me. Did she laugh about how clueless I was? Did she complain about my late nights working on client pitches? The thought made my chest ache. I drove back to the apartment around noon, hoping Linda would be at work. No such luck. She was there, sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and puffy. "Mark," she said, standing up, "I'm so sorry. I didn't sleep. Can we talk?" I wanted to walk away, but something rooted me to the spot. Maybe it was the part of me that still hoped we could fix this, even though I knew better. She started talking, her words tumbling out. She said she'd already texted Thomas, telling him they couldn't talk anymore. She swore she'd do anything: counseling, transparency, whatever I wanted. "I messed up," she said, her voice breaking. "But I choose you, Mark. I always will." I wanted to believe her, but her words felt like echoes of the email. Choose me? She hadn't chosen me for 2 years. I sat down, my hands clasped so tight my knuckles turned white. "Why him?" I asked, my voice low. "What does he have that I don't?" Linda hesitated, and that pause felt like a lifetime. "It's not about you," she said finally. "Thomas, he's this escape. My life's so structured. Work, wedding plans, expectations with him. It's just free." Free, the word hit me like a slap. I'd spent years building a life with her, thinking it was what she wanted, and she saw it as a cage. I thought about all the moments I'd taken for granted: late night talks over takeout, her head on my shoulder during hikes, the way she'd hum off-key in the shower. Were those real? Or was I just a placeholder while she dreamed of Thomas? "I need space," I said, standing up. "I can't make decisions with you looking at me like that." Her face fell, but she nodded. "I'll stay with my sister," she said quietly. "Take as long as you need." She packed a bag and left, the door clicking shut like a final note. The apartment felt hollow without her, but I needed it that way. I needed to figure out who I was without her voice in my head, without her promises clouding my judgment. I sat on the couch, staring at the ring she'd left on the table, her engagement ring, glinting like a question I couldn't answer. That night, I started journaling, something I hadn't done since college. I wrote about the pain, the anger, the love I still felt despite everything. It was messy, raw, but it helped me see one thing clearly. I couldn't stay in limbo. Linda's betrayal had broken something in me, but it also woke me up. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I had to face it alone first. The days after Linda left were a blur, like I was moving through fog. Our Denver apartment, once filled with her laughter and the smell of her coffee, felt like a museum of a life I didn't recognize anymore. Her engagement ring sat on the kitchen table, catching the light every time I passed by. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. It was a reminder of everything we'd planned, our wedding, our future, and how it had all been built on a lie. I threw myself into work, hoping it would drown out the noise in my head. As a graphic designer, I could usually lose myself in a project, tweaking a client's logo, playing with color palettes until something clicked, but every design felt flat. Every color muted. I'd sit at my desk, staring at my screen, and see Linda's email instead. "Soulmate, safe bet, I love you dash." I'd hear her voice saying Thomas was her escape, like our life together was a prison. I started avoiding our usual spots, the coffee shop where we'd spent Sunday mornings. Her sketching campaign ideas while I doodled on napkins was off limits. The park where we'd hiked, her hand in mine, felt tainted. I even stopped listening to our favorite playlist. Every song reminded me of her humming along in the car. Instead, I'd walk aimlessly around Denver at night, the city's lights blurring through my thoughts. I kept wondering, when did I lose her? Was it 2 years ago? Or had I never really had her at all? Ryan checked in on me a few days later, dragging me to a dive bar near his place. "You look like hell, man," he said, sliding a beer across the table. I tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. I told him about Linda's offer to cut off Thomas, her tears, her promises. "She says she chooses me," I said, staring at the table, "but I don't even know what that means anymore." Ryan leaned back, scratching his beard. "Look, Mark, people don't just flip a switch and stop loving someone. If she's been hung up on this guy for 2 years, what's going to change?" His words hit hard. I've been clinging to the idea that Linda could just erase Thomas from her heart, that we could go back to how things were. But Ryan was right. Love doesn't work like that. I thought about the late-night texts, the solo hikes, the way she'd light up around Thomas. That wasn't going away. no matter how many promises she made. Back at the apartment, I started going through our stuff, not to pack but to understand. I found a box of old photos, us at a music festival, her head on my shoulder, a selfie from our first hike together, both of us grinning like idiots. I found a note she'd written me last year, tucked in my sketchbook. "You make me better, Mark. Love you always." My eyes stung. Had she meant it then? Or was it just another lie? I called my sister, Jess, who lives in Boulder. She's always been my sounding board, the one who'd tell me straight when I was being an idiot. "You don't owe her anything," Jess said over the phone. "She broke your trust. Mark, you don't have to fix this." I told her I still loved Linda, that part of me wanted to try. Jess sighed. "Love isn't enough if she's not all in. You deserve someone who chooses you, not someone who settles for you." That night, I sat down with my journal again. Writing was the only thing keeping me sane, a way to untangle the mess in my head. I wrote about the betrayal, the anger, but also the love I couldn't shake. I wrote about the life I'd imagined: kids, a house, growing old with Linda, and how it felt like a dream someone else had now. I realized I was grieving, not just for her, but for the version of me who believed in us. I didn't know what to do about Linda's ring, still sitting on the table like a question mark. Part of me wanted to give it back, to close the door for good, but another part, the stupid, hopeful part, kept wondering if we could rebuild. I wasn't ready to decide, not yet, but I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, caught between the past and a future I couldn't see. I needed to find a way to move forward, even if it meant letting go of everything I'd held on to. The apartment was starting to feel like a ghost town, each corner haunted by memories of Linda. Her engagement ring still sat on the kitchen table, a glinting reminder of what we'd lost. I'd been avoiding it for days, but every time I walked by, it pulled at me, like it was daring me to make a choice. I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I'd ever be. The weight of Linda's betrayal, 2 years of secret meetings with Thomas, her calling him her soulmate, was a stone in my chest, heavy and unyielding. I tried to keep busy. Work was my lifeline. Even if it felt hollow, as a graphic designer, I could throw myself into projects, redesigning a client's website, sketching logos for a new cafe in Lodo. But my focus was shot. I'd stare at my tablet, stylus frozen, and see Linda's face instead, or worse, imagine her with Thomas, laughing on some mountain trail while I was home, oblivious. I kept wondering what they talked about during those solo hikes. Did she tell him she loved him in person, too? Did they sit under the stars, like we used to, while she called me her safe bet? I started going to the gym, something I hadn't done since college, not to get ripped, but to burn off the anger that kept bubbling up. I'd hit the treadmill, music blaring, trying to outrun the questions in my head. Why wasn't I enough? What did Thomas have that made her choose him, even if just in her heart? The gym became a ritual. Every punch on the bag, every mile on the treadmill, was a way to feel something other than hurt. But it didn't erase the emptiness that hit me when I got home, alone in a space that still smelled like her perfume. One night, about a week after Linda left for her sister's, I got a text from her. "Can we talk soon? I miss you." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to call her, to hear her voice, to believe we could fix this. But another part, the part that kept replaying her email, wanted to delete the message and never look back. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Ryan. She texted. I said, pacing my living room, "What do I do?" Ryan didn't sugarcoat it. "She's had 2 years to figure herself out. Mark, don't let her drag you back into her mess." His words stuck with me, but they didn't make it easier. I missed her. I missed the way she'd tease me about my terrible cooking, the way she'd leave sticky notes on my sketchbooks with silly doodles. I missed the life we'd planned. Even if I wasn't sure it was ever real, I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I'd been too boring, too predictable. Maybe I'd worked too many late nights, leaving her feeling alone. But then I'd remember her words, "Thomas is my escape." And the guilt would turn to anger. I wasn't the one who'd lied. I decided to meet my sister Jess for coffee in Boulder. She's always been the one to cut through my overthinking, over lattes. I told her about Linda's text, about the ring, about the ache I couldn't shake. "You're allowed to miss her," Jess said, stirring her coffee. "But don't confuse missing her with needing her. She broke something, Mark. You can't unbreak it just because she says she's sorry." I nodded, but my throat tightened. "I still love her," I admitted. Jess reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I know, but love doesn't mean you have to stay. Back home, I kept journaling, filling pages with everything I couldn't say out loud. I wrote about the betrayal, the way it made me question myself. I wrote about the future I'd imagined, kids running through a backyard, Linda and I growing old on a porch somewhere. But I also wrote about the person I was becoming, someone who was starting to see through the fog. I wasn't ready to forgive Linda, not yet. Maybe not ever, but I was starting to realize I needed to forgive myself for ignoring the signs, for believing in a version of her that didn't exist. I looked at the ring again that night, picking it up for the first time. It felt heavier than it should, like it carried 3 years of promises that weren't kept. I set it back down, not ready to decide its fate, but I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of what we'd been. I had to find a way to move forward, even if I didn't know where I was going. The weeks after Linda's text felt like I was learning to breathe again, but every inhale hurt. Her engagement ring still sat on the kitchen table, a silent question I couldn't answer. I'd started to hate our Denver apartment. Every corner held a memory of her, from the coffee mugs we'd picked out together to the couch where we'd binge-watched shows. But moving out wasn't an option, not yet. My graphic design gigs were steady, but I wasn't exactly swimming in cash. And the idea of starting over somewhere new felt like giving up. I kept up my gym routine, pounding the treadmill like it could outrun my thoughts. It didn't, but it gave me something to focus on besides Linda's email. Soulmate. Safe bet. I love you dash. I'd see her face in my mind, laughing with Thomas on those solo hikes. And I'd push myself harder, sweat dripping, until the anger dulled to a low hum. Journaling helped, too. I'd fill pages late at night, spilling out the hurt, the confusion, the love I still couldn't shake. I wrote about the life I'd thought we'd have: kids, a house, lazy Sundays, and how it felt like a story someone else wrote. One morning, I got another text from Linda. I'm still at my sister's. Can we meet? I need to see you. I stared at it for an hour, my coffee going cold. Part of me wanted to say yes, to see if her eyes still held the same spark, to believe we could rebuild. But Ryan's words echoed. She's had 2 years to figure herself out. I didn't reply. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I signed up for an art class, not for work, but for me. A local studio was offering a weekend painting workshop, and I figured it might help me feel like Mark again, not just Linda's fiancé. The class was small, just a handful of people in a sunlit room that smelled of acrylics and coffee. The instructor, a guy named Leo with paint-splattered jeans, told us to paint what we feel. I started with dark blues and grays, smearing them across the canvas like the storm in my head. But as the hours passed, I added brighter strokes, yellows, greens, without really knowing why. It wasn't a masterpiece, but it was mine, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something like hope. After class, I grabbed a beer with one of the other students, a woman named Claire. She was a nurse, mid-30s, with a quick laugh and no filter. We talked about art, not relationships, and it was a relief to just be a guy in a bar. Not a guy whose fiancé broke his heart. Claire mentioned she painted to unwind after tough shifts, and I found myself opening up about how I'd lost my spark for design since everything with Linda. You'll find it again, she said, clinking her glass against mine. Just give yourself time. Her words stuck with me. Time. I'd been so caught up in losing Linda that I hadn't thought about what I was gaining: space to figure out who I was without her. I started small. I rearranged the apartment, moving the couch to a new spot, swapping out photos of us for prints I'd designed years ago. I cooked meals for myself, not just takeout. Even if they were terrible, I called Jess, my sister, and told her about the art class. That's my brother, she said, her voice warm. You're still in there. Mark, keep going. But the pull of Linda was still there. Late at night, I'd reread her texts, wondering if I was being too hard on her. She'd said it wasn't physical, that she wanted to fix things. Could I trust her again? Did I even want to? I thought about Thomas, about how he'd been her escape, while I was her rock. The words still stung, like a bruise I kept pressing. I wanted to be someone's everything, not their fallback. I finally moved the ring to a drawer, not ready to give it back, but needing it out of sight. It felt like a small victory, like I was taking back a piece of myself. The art class was the next weekend, and I found myself looking forward to it, to the paint, to the possibility of creating something new. I wasn't healed, not even close, but I was starting to see a path forward, one where I wasn't defined by Linda's choices. For the first time, I wondered if I could be enough for myself. The art class became my anchor, a small piece of solid ground in the chaos of my life. Every Saturday, I'd show up at the Denver studio, paintbrush in hand, losing myself in colors and shapes. It wasn't about creating something perfect. It was about creating something mine. The canvases I painted were messy, full of jagged lines and bold strokes, but they felt honest, like they held pieces of the hurt and hope I was carrying. Linda's absence still loomed, her engagement ring now tucked away in a drawer, but I was starting to feel like I could breathe without her shadow over me. I kept getting texts from her, though. Mark, I'm trying so hard. Can we just talk? Or, I miss us. Each one was a tug at my heart, pulling me back to the life we'd had, or the life I thought we'd had. I still hadn't responded. Every time I tried to type a reply, I'd see her email to Thomas, Soulmate, safe bet, and my fingers would freeze. I wasn't ready to face her, not when I was still figuring out who I was without her. One evening, after a long day tweaking a client's branding package, I met Claire from art class for coffee. She'd become a friend, someone who didn't know the old Mark, the one tied to Linda. We sat at a cafe in Rhino, talking about everything but relationships. Her crazy shifts at the hospital, my latest design project, the way our instructor Leo always got paint on his glasses. You're different lately, Claire said, stirring her latte. Less heavy. I laughed, surprised. That's a first. But she was right. I was starting to feel lighter, like I was shedding the weight of Linda's betrayal bit by bit. I told Claire about the journaling, how it was helping me untangle my thoughts. You should read some of it to me sometime, she said, half joking. I shook my head, but the idea stuck. Later that night, I flipped through my journal, reading the pages I'd filled over weeks. It was raw, anger at Linda, guilt for not seeing the signs, fear of being alone forever. But there were new entries, too, about the art class, about cooking a halfway decent stir-fry, about moments where I didn't feel defined by her absence. I called my sister Jess, needing her no-nonsense perspective. I keep almost texting Linda back, I admitted, sitting on my couch, the Denver skyline sparkling outside. What if she's really changed? Jess sighed, her voice gentle but firm. Mark, she hid this for 2 years. You don't owe her a second chance just because she's sorry now. You're finally finding yourself again. Don't give that up. Her words hit home. I'd been so focused on losing Linda that I hadn't noticed how much I was gaining confidence, clarity, a sense of who I was outside of us. Inspired, I signed up for another art class. This one focused on charcoal sketches. It was harder, messier, but I loved the grit of it. The way my hands got smudged as I worked. I started sketching outside of class, too. Filling a notebook with cityscapes and random faces from coffee shops, it felt like I was rebuilding a part of myself I'd lost. The part that used to stay up late drawing just for the hell of it. But Linda's texts kept coming, each one a reminder of the choice I hadn't made. One night, I sat down with a beer and opened her messages, reading through weeks of, I'm sorry, and I miss you dash. I typed out a reply, I need more time, but didn't send it. Instead, I called Ryan. I'm stuck, man, I said. I don't know if I should talk to her or let her go. Ryan didn't hesitate. You're not stuck. Mark, you're moving forward. She's the one stuck in the past. He was right. I was moving, even if it was slow. The art classes, the gym, the late-night sketches, they were proof I wasn't just Linda's safe bet anymore. I was starting to be Mark again, someone who didn't need her to feel whole. But the pull of our history was strong, and I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. I'd have to face her eventually, to decide if I could forgive her or if I needed to let her go for good. For now, I put my phone down, grabbed my sketchbook, and started drawing. The lines were shaky, but they were mine, and that was enough. The Denver skyline glittered outside my window, but inside, I was wrestling with a decision that felt heavier than ever. Linda's texts had slowed down, but the last one, I'll wait as long as you need, Mark, sat unread on my phone, a weight I couldn't ignore. For weeks, I'd been rebuilding myself through art classes, gym sessions, and late-night sketches, but her words still lingered, like a song I couldn't stop humming. I knew I couldn't keep dodging her forever. I had to face her, not for her sake, but for mine. I'd been finding my footing. The charcoal sketch class was a challenge, but I loved the way my hands smudged black as I drew cityscapes, faces, anything that felt alive. Claire, my friend from art class, had started joining me for coffee after sessions. Her stories about hospital chaos making me laugh in a way I hadn't in months. I wasn't looking for anything romantic. My heart was too bruised for that. But her friendship reminded me there was a world beyond Linda's betrayal. My sister, Jess, noticed the change, too. "You sound like you again," she said during a call, her voice warm. Even Ryan, ever the skeptic, gave me a nod over beers, saying, "You're killing it, man." But Linda's shadow was still there. Her engagement ring, now in a drawer, felt like a tether to a life I wasn't sure I wanted back. I kept replaying her email to Thomas, soulmate, safe bet, and her tearful promises to fix things. Could I trust her? Did I even want to try? I journaled pages about it, filling my notebook with questions I couldn't answer. One night, I wrote, "I don't want to be her safe bet. I want to be enough." That sentence hit me hard. It was the truth I'd been circling for weeks. I decided it was time. I texted Linda, "Can we meet tomorrow?" Neutral ground. She replied instantly, suggesting a park near our old coffee shop. The next day, I got there early, sitting on a bench with my sketchbook, drawing the bare trees to calm my nerves. When Linda showed up, my heart twisted. She looked tired. Her hair pulled back, no makeup, but still beautiful in a way that hurt. "Mark," she said, sitting down, her voice soft, "thank you for this." I didn't ease into it. "I've been trying to understand," I said, closing my sketchbook, "why you needed Thomas, why I wasn't enough, but I can't keep living with that question." Her eyes welled up. "You were enough," she said. "I was the one who messed up. I cut him off. Mark, I'm in therapy. I want us back." I looked at her, searching for the woman I'd loved, but all I saw was the email, the lies, the 2 years she'd given to someone else. "I believe you're sorry," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest, "but I don't trust you anymore, and I don't think I can." Her face crumpled, but she nodded, like she'd expected it. "I did this," she whispered. "I ruined us." I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy to. Instead, I pulled her ring from my pocket and set it on the bench between us. "This isn't mine anymore," I said. She stared at it, tears falling, but didn't pick it up. We sat in silence, the park alive with joggers and dogs, a world moving on without us. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said finally, standing up. She looked at me, her eyes pleading, but I walked away, my sketchbook under my arm, feeling both lighter and heavier than before. That night, I sat in my apartment, the space finally feeling like mine. I opened my journal and wrote about the meeting, about letting go. It hurt, but it was a clean hurt, like a wound starting to heal. I thought about the art class, Claire's laugh, Jess's voice, Ryan's nod. I thought about the sketches piling up in my notebook, each one a step toward a Mark who wasn't defined by Linda's choices. I wasn't whole yet. The sting of safe bet still lingered, and I knew lonely nights were waiting, but I'd chosen myself, and that was a start. I grabbed a pencil and started sketching, a horizon, open and wide, like the future I was beginning to imagine. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and for the first time in months, that felt like enough.